All right. Hello, everyone. Welcome to the latest Aurelian Coaching webinar, series of free webinars just for you guys. And my name is Nicole Coustier. I'm the founder of Aurelian Coaching, and I like to do these webinars every once in a while to address some of the trends and some of the shortcomings that I'm seeing in business, in jobs, in working. And I like to talk to people about how some of these trends are affecting them. And especially in this COVID era, in this era of remote working, a lot of what we typically think of as good business practices have to be revisited. And this is a really good example. The topic of today's webinar is a good example of that. And this is about employee recognition, employee reward, and you know what? I am seeing it slip. I'm seeing it slip big time in this era of remote working. Here's what I'm observing, and you guys can let me know if you're seeing the same types of things or if you're experiencing the same types of things. As people have moved to more remote work, working from home, I am seeing that people are online longer. They're reducing their commute, so it's easier for them to get online in the mornings, right? But the other thing is because they don't have anywhere to go in the evenings, they just stay online. They're just continuing to work. Or in an office environment, what people would often do is take breaks, right? You would have conversations at the water cooler or go out to lunch with people. And a lot of that isn't happening. So people are just working straight through. Now, listen, if you are making the proactive decision to just work through all of these other times that you didn't used to work, that's great. That's fine. You're making a proactive decision. But what I'm seeing a lot of times is that because the bosses are sending out emails at 9 p.m., there's kind of this silent expectation that, yeah, the employees, why not? They should respond to those emails, right? Or that, the day doesn't end at 5, even if it might have before. Whatever your day used to end, 6, 7, whatever it might be, right? That's not happening anymore. People are just working through. And there doesn't seem to be any acknowledgement that there are longer hours, that we are subjecting ourselves to more of the workplace issues and problems that we are paid to solve, right? These are our jobs. We are solving these problems, but there's no off switch. Or the off switch is really loosey-goosey these days. And so one of the topics that I'd like to revisit for all of us is what employee recognition looks like. And the reason I want to talk about it within this context of remote working is because I'm also noticing, and at first I thought this was a separate issue, but now I think they're actually related. I'm also noticing that people are defaulting to like unhealthy coping mechanisms to handle their stress. I am seeing people post on social media about over drinking, overeating, over binging Netflix, over gaming, all of these things. So they're working longer hours. And then when they have the ability to turn it off, they're going into behaviors that can put them into a dopamine stream, right? So it's not like, better people are not subject to this. Like, we're all subject to this, right? Dopamine is a natural neurotransmitter in our bodies, right? And it is the chemical in our bodies that fluctuates with and influences learning and motivation and focus and pleasure, right? And what I'm concerned about is that there's more dopamine dysregulation in this era of remote work, that the demands on us are higher in a remote environment, and there isn't enough acknowledgement, reward, celebration, as these things are subtly shifting, so that when employees eventually do log off, that they're spending 3 hours on a game or binging Netflix or whatever it might be to get the dopamine hit that they need, because they haven't had it for a 12-hour day working from home, right? And so I want to revisit this issue, and I want to talk about two things. One is just define employee recognition to begin with, because in the pre-COVID era, I've talked about this before, because I think so many companies don't do it well. They didn't know how to do employee recognition well. So it's even worse. It's worse in the remote work environment. So I want to revisit that. What is employee recognition? How do you do it well? There are very, very specific things about employee recognition that I want everybody to know. So that's number one. But number two is this issue of putting ourselves in a dopamine stream, getting our dopamine hits in healthy ways during the course of the day. And one of the ways is employee recognition, proper, appropriate, frequent employee recognition. That's a healthy way to manage our dopamine flow, right? And not only that, but if you're doing that for your team, right, you are going to have team members that have a healthier approach to their learning, their motivation, their focus, all of these things, job satisfaction, right? So there's huge upsides to getting employee recognition right. And so, and I saw a survey on LinkedIn that reported that people who participated in the survey said that after COVID, 2/3 of the people participating in that survey said that they're looking for other jobs. They're not sticking around. That is a huge percentage. 2/3 of people say, well, yeah, once I'm vaccinated and all this COVID stuff I'm out of here. Ooh, gosh, as employers, can you really afford that turnover right when you're hoping for things to get back to normal? No. So get this right now. Your employees, if they are not managing their dopamine throughout the day, right? Or any of the other neurotransmitters, right? We've got all these chemicals running through our bodies. It's important to know that when we are stressed, when we are overworked, when we're experiencing uncertainty and confusion, all of that stuff, all those chemicals running through our bodies and through our brains is affecting our work, right? So just don't be at the effect of these things, and don't just kind of throw up your hands and say, well, I'm going to have another glass of wine, right? Think about healthy coping mechanisms. How can you control your experience? How can you influence the experience of your team, of your employees, so that over the long term, it's a win-win for everybody? Okay, so that's the topic for today's webinar. Okay, so let's review employee recognition. Employee recognition is actually made up of two things, and they are two separate things. One is acknowledgement, and the other is reward, right? Acknowledgement and reward. And they do need to be treated separately. And so many times, leaders, managers, they just conflate those things, and they just put employee recognition in one little bucket, right? And it turns out that's not the case. So let's talk about acknowledgement. There is a good way to acknowledge employee contributions. And there are 3 things that you should have in order to do this part of employee recognition well. The acknowledgement piece is number 1, contextualized. In other words, you are making note of why that person doing what they did is important for the company, for the project, for the client, for the team. It's within context, right? So it's not just saying, hey, really great communication there. Why in that particular case was the communication super important? And what is it about what they did? So that's number 2, is be specific, right? Be specific about what that person did. So it's not just great communication. It's how did they communicate? What did they communicate? Why did it matter? Why did it matter in that particular case? So context and specifics. Now, this means that as a manager, a supervisor, a leader, whatever it is, this requires that you're actually paying attention. Yeah, I know you've got a million things to do. I get it, but your job is to lead. Your job is to manage. Your job is to notice. So notice. And when you want to acknowledge an employee or a team member, it's really important to be able to articulate why it was so important and what specifically they did. Now, the third thing is that it's personal. The one thing that I've seen a lot of leadership do is they just do a blanket acknowledgement to a department or to a team or a division, great job, sales team. Listen, pay attention. Who did what? Name names. If you really want to acknowledge an entire team, beautiful. Who are the members of that team? There are 4 members. Call them out by name. Be personal, contextual, specific, and personal. If you have all those ingredients in your employee acknowledgement piece, you are doing great. You're paying attention. And the employees feel, oh, haha, somebody's paying attention. Somebody is noticing. Whoa, talk about a big dopamine hit, right? Dopamine is called the happy hormone, right? You feel good. You feel good when other people notice. Now, if you get an email, right, that just says, great job, sales team. Yeah, not so much a dopamine hit. Our numbers were up this quarter. Fantastic, sales team. Right? But if that feedback were contextualized, hey, we are in probably one of the toughest eras that our company will ever go through, right? And after 2 consecutive quarters of declines, the sales team really hit it out of the park last quarter. Contextual. Oh, gosh, that feels a little bit better, right? Specific. After the sales team noticed those 2 consecutive quarters of decline, they tried something different. They were brave and courageous enough to go out of their comfort zone and try new things. And those things worked. Here are the things. Specific. So beautiful, right? And then I want to call out these people in particular who really forged ahead and took these initiatives and ran them up the chain and advocated for their people and whatever else it might be. You know, Jane, Tom, Dave, Amanda, whatever. I want to call you guys out specifically. I mean, listen, if I got that email and I was on that team, I'd be right now. I'd pick up the phone right there. I'm going to do more sales, right? Contextual, specific, personal. It does require more time. Yeah. Yeah. It requires more time and more effort than sending out the general email. Do it. It's your job. It's your job. If you don't want turnover, if you don't want those people to be checking out, right, to be losing motivation, right, see if you can influence their dopamine levels in positive ways throughout the day, throughout the week, throughout the month, whatever. Do it. It'll work. It'll have a lot of positive influence on what you get out of your team members if you do it this way. Now, I said employee recognition is two things. One is the acknowledgement. So we just went through that, but the other is the reward. Now, talk about dopamine. The reward is something that is going to have a very, very positive effect. Now, there are a couple of ways to think about this, but one is that there should be a celebration aspect to this. And a lot of people don't think about that, right? So a lot of people think of reward in the traditional context in corporate environments is here's some money. Here's a bonus. Yeah, congratulations. And I'm not knocking that. That's awesome. But sometimes it ought to come with celebration. Now, I work specifically with achievers. And so these are people who embrace the identity of being hard workers, problem solvers, people who are consistent and reliable and responsible, right? And they have the identity of, I always level up. I always level up. And so for these people, interestingly, they really struggle with how to celebrate. Right? And I'm not even talking necessarily about the work hard, play hard. Of course, that's part of it. That's great if you do that, right? But I'm talking about just in small ways. The achievers need to hit huge milestones before they allow themselves to celebrate something. And we've got to break that. And the reason is, again, if you are not getting some sort of dopamine hit from all of the hard work that you're doing on a more regular basis, then what you might notice yourself doing is redirecting these energies to unhealthy habits, any of the things that I've mentioned in the past, people grabbing sweets or grabbing salty junk food just to feel better. Listen, if that is the way that you're celebrating, just be sure that you're making that choice proactively, right? And it's not this sort of knee-jerk reaction, this need where the chemicals in your body, you have been you've been lacking dopamine. And so you're going to grab some food to eat that'll make you feel better. And it's a knee-jerk reaction you're not noticing, right? That's different than I had a really great week at work. My boss noticed I got really specific acknowledgement, and I want to celebrate with my family by having a special dessert at dinner. Okay, I get it, right? That's healthier, right? But just make sure that you are just not at the effect of all the things. And if you need to create for yourself ways to celebrate, you can do that. But make those decisions in healthy ways. Now, if you are a leader and you are managing people, running departments, running teams, think about celebration separately than just the acknowledgement, right? Or just the bonus, whatever it might be, that specific reward, right? Think about how to celebrate. Now, a lot of times in office culture, there would be everybody bring in a cake and everybody come into the conference room or the break room and we do this thing, right? Okay, fine. But we're all working remotely now, right? So what does that look like? I don't know. Why don't you ask your team how they'd like to celebrate? I'm sure they'd have ideas, right? Maybe it's a matter of, a Friday Zoom call where a lot of people are like, oh, I don't need another Friday Zoom call, right? No, everybody, hey, get off the laptops, turn off the phones at 3:00. We're all going to meet on Zoom and we're just going to have a good time. We're just going to socialize a little bit. And that's our way to celebrate. And that's our way to say, we've worked so hard all week long, right? Cutting things off at 3 p.m. in the afternoon versus 6 p.m. is not going to make or break anything. Let's just do it. Let's celebrate being on this team, being in this company, acknowledging each other and our peers for what we're doing, reinforcing things. It doesn't, celebrations don't have to cost a lot of money. It doesn't, but what I want people to do and what I'm suggesting is you think about it separately, that you don't just think of employee recognition as just this thing that you kind of do and no, think about these things separately, right? Decide in advance. How are we going to celebrate this? What makes sense for our company culture, even as we have moved to remote work? What does our company culture, how do we celebrate? Answer that specific question over and above the reward part. Okay. So once you are talking about celebration and doing things there are a lot of ways to reward employees that have nothing to do with money. Now, if you are a company that can afford that and it's just part of your culture to offer bonuses and monetary, fantastic, do it. Nobody rejects that stuff, right? Money is good. Money is good. But there are lots of other ways, guys. There are lots of other ways to reward employees. Now, depending on the level of employee, I'm going to throw out a few ideas, but one is to increase visibility of that employee among the larger organization, right? Increase their cachet within the team, within the division, within the company as a whole, right? Is there a way to put that employee out in front? So this could be something like the reward might be rolled into how you acknowledge. So rather than acknowledging that individual within the team, maybe you're also creating another note that goes up the chain to, company leadership, senior leadership, right? I want to point out that is a huge reward for an employee. Another thing that you could do is put the employee in the position of authority or leadership as it relates to a specific thing that they did particularly well, right? So the example that I used earlier, where the employee is, did an excellent job of some sort of communication in order to make a sale or something like that, right? So have the employee, ask the employee, hey, would you mind teaching other people how you did that. And think of, it doesn't have to be burdensome, right? But just to put the employee in a position of being able to teach others, right? Ownership. This is something that I did. I executed on and it was successful, and give them an opportunity to talk about it, to explain it. What you don't want to do is you don't want the reward to be a burden, right? You don't want to say, okay, employee, congratulations on this spectacular thing you did. And we'll be looking for, a 45-minute PowerPoint presentation to no, right? But to put the employee out in front and just to have the employee, you can tell, hey, tell me what you did. Tell me what you did there. How are you feeling? Or how did you gauge the situation? And just open it up to questions and discussion among team members. You're lifting up that person. What an incredible reward for somebody to be an authority on something. Right? What a beautiful thing for you to do for that person, right? So you can see how rewards can be lots of different things. How else might you reward an employee by putting them in a position of authority? Like maybe you could have somebody on the admin staff work with that employee to create an SOP around it, right? Some sort of lasting effect of what that employee did, right? I even heard another company naming things after employees. How cool is that, right? It's the Smith method for objection handling. It's an internal thing, right? But how cool is that they start calling it by the employee's name, right? For posterity. And these are the little things that, that LinkedIn survey that said that 2/3 of people, they're like, I'm out of here. I want something else. No, thanks. Think about an employee recognition practice that takes into account those 3 elements of doing employee acknowledgement well: celebration and reward in a way that is meaningful and lasting for your employees. Listen, I doubt that you're going to have employees answering that survey like they're out of here and they're leaving as soon as all this stuff blows over. They're going to be staying. Their dopamine levels, they're not going to be, searching for unhealthy ways to increase their happy hormone, right? They are getting it at work. They're getting it at work. How cool is that? And you can influence that. And you can get motivation and learning and focus and happiness from your team members by just doing this. And it's a practice. It's something that you need to learn to prioritize. And hey, achievers, listen, you also don't have to wait for other people to do this for you, right? Now, if there's one thing that I know about achievers is they don't often have a victim mentality where they're just sitting there and saying, well, it's all my circumstance and my boss just is this and my boss is that and this company is this and woe is me. No, achievers solve problems, right? So achievers, if you are recognizing about yourself that you are engaging in unhealthy behaviors and you are trying to put yourself in a dopamine stream because you're not getting what you need throughout the day, listen, you don't need to wait for your manager to do any of this stuff. Now that you know this stuff, now that you're aware of it, now that you say like, oh my gosh, I can't even function without overspending throughout the day, right? In between my meetings, I'm on Amazon, clicking, buy it now, buy it now. And you want that dopamine hit of all the packages ending up on your doorstep, right? Is that healthy? I don't know. You have to decide for yourself, but it is worth asking the question. And if you don't need to be overspending in order to get those dopamine hits, there are lots of ways that you could do it in a healthier way for yourself. For yourself. Listen, daily affirmations within this framework, right? Can you be contextual and specific and personal about your own contributions day in and day out? Why do you need other people to recognize? You could do this for yourself. You could decide how you want to celebrate. Give yourself the opportunity to engage in healthy behaviors so that you can regulate your dopamine a little bit better and not engage in those unhealthy practices. You can do this on your own. You get to decide, right? So, and the difference there, just to be clear, because a lot of people say, well, I eat half a cake as a reward. That is my celebration, is, food. I reward myself with food. We go out to dinner, right? That's fine. Do you need to overindulge at the restaurant? Probably not. But that's the question that I'm asking. I just want you to make these decisions proactively and recognize when in advance you're deciding, I'm going to have a really nice dessert and I'm going to share it with my husband tonight as a way to celebrate this milestone at work, versus we're going to go out to dinner. I'm not going to think about anything ahead of time. I just need to feel good. So when that menu comes, I'm going to order all the things. I'm going to order wine and I'm going to order this dessert and I'm going to order the because I'm celebrating. Just make sure you like your reasons for doing the things that you're doing. And if you want to make healthier choices, think about where you're searching for dopamine hits. And if those behaviors are things that, probably not serving you over the long term, you have other options, lots of other options. And I've talked about some of these. I've talked about them within a business context, company context, but you can do it for yourself. You can absolutely do it for yourself. Okay, guys, so I hope this webinar was helpful. If anybody has any questions, there are no questions. You are welcome. So use this framework for thinking more proactively and deciding more proactively how you want to manage your work life, how you want to manage your dopamine, right? You don't have to be at the effect of all this stuff. You can decide. You can look critically at what's happening during your day-to-day work life and make different decisions if you want to. You have everything that you need to make different decisions beginning now. Okay, guys, in the follow-up email where I will be sending out the link to the replay for this, I'm also going to be sending out a link to some additional information, blog posts and things like that, so that you guys can have additional resources for thinking about these things. You can print it out, you can keep it with you, you can refer to it in the future. Okay, guys, have a wonderful rest of the day, and I will talk to you guys again soon. Take care. Bye-bye.